Wow, what three amazing messages, so inspiring, and what a great way to start off the day. I'm sure that this brought up a lot of questions for you. Make sure that you are using the chat box, bottom right of your screen, to be posing questions to our speakers, and we're gonna get those in just a minute. But I'm really, really excited and honored to welcome these three amazing leaders live. Stefano and to Stefano, Aaron, and Laura. Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for those talks. It's great to talk to you. Do we have Stefano and Aaron and Laura?
Hi.
Good morning or evening.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, guys.
Good morning for all of you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Just so you know, team, I'm having a little hard time hearing them. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. I just want to give a special shout out to Stefano. You want to tell everybody where you are and what time it is there?
Thank you. Yeah, it's well, what is it now? I'm losing count. It's midnight. I'm in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So that's where me and my family are based.
Yes.
So
Well,
I'm happy to be with you. And I was telling people before I had to have a glass of wine to make sure I kept awake. So I'm ahead of the curve.
yes.
Well, ladies, I'm thrilled to have you join us as well. I just had to do that special acknowledgement of if anyone tries to get me to talk after midnight, there's not great results. So thank you so much, all three of you, for joining us. I loved all of your videos. I love all of your statements. I just love to kind of get your thoughts on a couple of things and get your leadership and expertise on a couple of things, and then we will open this up to some conversations with our audience. I know that they're clamoring to get you guys as well. So where I'd love to start off is at the Pet Sustainability Coalition, we are industry-wide still considered a relatively new organization, having been found in 2013. I know that all three of you represent relatively new organizations from that from the Climate Collaborative in 2017, Global Natural Rubber 2018, and the JEDI Collaborative in 2019. So for your perspective, as either a relatively new organization or as a company and an organization just starting out on their sustainability journey, can you talk to us a little bit about that journey of getting started, finding some first followers, really gaining momentum, and how that worked for you? Laura, I'd love to start with you if that's all right.
Well, OSC has been around since early 2012, so we've had the chance to try and learn and fail with and succeed with 3 different collaboratives. And so what we've really found is, if you think of the African proverb, if you've ever heard that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we've definitely found, and I continue to see, that when you embark in collaboration, at first you must go a lot slower. But once you start to gain momentum and really come together with common goals and alignment, you start to go very fast. Because there are so many different believers and passionate people working with you across industries. At first, it took a lot of time to align on common values, and in all the platforms that we've built, and measurable outcomes. But that is key to kind of gaining alignment, is clear facts, goals for measurable outcomes. Actually, I think the biggest, thing we learned was with the Packaging Collaborative, which was our first one, which really informed climate, and then the JEDI Collaborative. And that was something that was really clear at first to us too, because a lot of times you'll change your mission along the way. We got a group of CEOs together, and that's what OSC is, a network of CEOs with very aligned missions, and found that one of their biggest sustainability problems in 2012 was packaging. There was no sustainable packaging that didn't go straight to landfill. All of it did not match the integrity of the products, which were super progressive in terms of moving towards organic and being fair trade and clean and non-GMO and much more. And so what we found along the way is we thought we knew the problem. We thought, let's just scale. If there's no solutions out there, let's just put a lot of demand out there and tell everybody in the packaging industry that we'll buy it when they build it. There's just nobody working on it. And what we found, although doing tons of testing and learning and some progress, was 6 years in, the pace of progress on the packaging industry offering technology was glacially slow. And so we realized we had identified the wrong problem. It wasn't demand. The demand was there. It was actually the system of plastics itself. And we realized that the real problem is we need to support changing the entire system, which is that plastic is optimized for price and efficiency. And that systematically eliminates innovation along the whole value chain. So there wasn't the system of innovation, even though we were pulling from demand. So what we've had to do is break apart the system in terms of rebuilding it with 100 leaders in packaging and beyond, and developing incubator teams to develop innovations outside of the plastics industry. And that's really what informed climate, and especially JEDI. With JEDI, we realized at first, let's just put some measures out there and put some commitments out there, like we learned how to do with Climate Collaborative, which worked very well. And we realized this is a human level problem along the way. And so we came together and were willing, even though it was really frustrating to start, to change our goal. To actually be much more around not just bringing women and commitments and different marginalized communities support and getting companies to act. It was actually centering marginalized communities at the heart of our work, centering them. And I'll get more into that later. Thank you.
When global natural sustainable rubber was really being introduced, that consensus was kind of already there? Or did you feel a lot of we're going to bring together some people to compromise, we could bring different voices? Or did you think everybody was kind of on the same page from the get-go?
No, definitely. I think it was probably the biggest piece of work that we had, and we're still having in GPS and ARIS, to bring people together. But I guess when you approach collaboration, one thing that you need to understand is that collaboration is not a choice. Yeah, you collaborate with people. People don't live in a silo, don't work in a silo in the world. If you have someone that is on another side of the wall, but with which you have to deal with in your supply chain, or they have an influence in the work that you do, if you don't collaborate with them, you can make choices that will impact them, and you're thinking about how to impact back on yourself, right? So either you do it together before and you strategize together on how to reach a similar goal or the same goal, or you'll find out that you have designed solutions in silo that then will clash with the expectation of stakeholders that you haven't kept involved. And I would like to say that that's not always the case. So there's sometimes when you have enough momentum with a group of stakeholders that is enough to change the status quo of the rules. Yeah, but you need to really understand which are the stakeholders that have a big stake in your work, in what you do. And I think for natural rubber, the realization has come in the last years by understanding that 85% of the production of this commodity comes from smallholder farmers. And this is a very real situation of 7 million families globally, especially in Southeast Asia, that in most cases live in poverty and don't get a living for producing this commodity that is so crucial for so many businesses. And people have started understanding, hey guys, if we don't do something about the living income, about the good living conditions of these people, about making sure that this production that they are taking care of for our businesses is bringing them some benefits as well, our businesses will cease to exist. And probably that's a realization that has, still to come in practice, I would say. So it's a big journey because it's difficult to just as a business decide one day, bam, I'm going to raise the wages of 1 million farmers that I'm touching with my supply chain. If my competitors don't do the same, I'm going to be out of business tomorrow. And that's where the realization of collaboration comes very clear to many people. If we don't do this together, one way our businesses are going to cease to exist. The other way is if I do it by myself, I'm going to cease to exist as a business. I'm not going to be economically viable in the future. And I guess that's what it is. It's to have collaboration. You need to have a clear problem, I would say, first of all, and understand that this is a common problem. And before you have a vision, really understand what is your common problem and start discussing how you can solve that together.
Yeah, I love that perspective. Something else, Aaron, that you brought up in your presentation that I really loved is that we have such a great variety of perspectives, right? Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, supply chain, climate. But I think that something that you touched on in your presentation is these might all seem different, but obviously small farmers that Stefano is working with has justice, equity, diversity, inclusion impacts that are disproportionately when it comes to climate. And so these things are all really, really connected. So what I'd love to get your perspective on is, not all of our member companies at PSC have a 10-member sustainability or corporate responsibility team, right? So while we want to work on justice, equity, inclusion, we want to work on supply chain, we want to work on climate, how have you managed to connect to people and explain to them that these are all intertwined and maybe help with some priority setting?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think you're absolutely right. Most people, unfortunately, don't have entire sustainability teams who get to focus on all of this and unlimited budgets. We all kind of exist in a world with limited resources. And I think that's become incredibly clear this year. So there's a couple of things we do. One, at the Climate Collaborative, just to leverage a sense of kind of buy-in and community, it's really important to make joining up be fun, easy, and simple. We use a lot of tenets of behavioral psychology in building our network and saying this needs to be something companies want to race to be part of. And a lot of that has involved getting trusted voices on from the beginning who we know companies want to hear from and listen to, so some of the leaders in the industry. And then when it comes to tactically, how do you help companies prioritize certain things, recognizing that it is very easy to get from, we want to switch our packaging to, oh, the whole food system is broken. How do we focus on that? And, this is also relates to issues of, immigration, national health, racial justice. We've seen so much of that become intertwined this year. So I think in some ways it's a lot simpler once you make those connections to see how all of these problems fit together and that you can actually tackle them at once. And I think sitting alongside that understanding, which is so crucial, is the sense that you can't then tackle everything at once. So for instance, on climate change, we're not asking companies to within a year go from doing nothing to conducting a full greenhouse gas inventory, setting targets across all scopes of emissions, and tackling them all at once, as they also, lay out a new racial justice company platform. It's starting with one thing, putting your stake in the ground, setting one goal, whether it's switching your packaging or reducing your waste or changing your sourcing around a key ingredient. Focusing on, doing an assessment of where is our impact? Where can we act, not just to act, but where can we do so toward the areas that will have the greatest impact, and get started there. Start simple, start easy, and build out from there, and don't feel like you have to tackle everything at once. I think, the complexity of climate change, the complexity of all of these issues can be a bit stultifying. So it's really important to just take a piece of it and grow from there. And that's really what our 9 commitment areas try to help companies do, is kind of find those areas where they can get started. And then the second thing I would just say is, that's the reason why these collaborations exist, is that you shouldn't be doing any of this alone. There's a lot of help out there and a lot of wisdom from within the industry and across company peers.
Yeah, I love that perspective, and I love that emphasizes bringing different people into the conversation, right? Which exactly goes to what Laura was talking about, which directly has impacts on Stefano as well. One question I'd love to pose to all of you, and then we're going to try and get some Q&A from the audience. How has COVID-19 and the 2020 of it all affected this conversation, right? We can't get onto a plane and go to a rubber plantation, right? We can't be bringing people together in these massive halls or town meetings to talk about climate or diversity, inclusion problems. How has that affected momentum towards collaboration? Has it expedited it? Has we had to look for new solutions? How has that been working out for you? Laura, do you want to start this one back up again?
Sure. So we were lucky in some ways, but we've also seen the challenges because we started the formation of the Jedi Collaborative over 2 years ago. And we've been working on collaboration and learning a bit over the last 9 or so years in terms of other platforms. So we had some momentum, and my co-founder, Cheryl Laughlin, and I were very passionate, as well a lot of other people, and it had built a lot of alignment, or so we thought, and mission into it. What we, and then some of the challenges hit. We launched the Jedi Collaborative on April 29th. We'd meant to launch it March 5th. And 3 days before that, to a room of 300 CEOs and thought leaders in the natural products industry. That was completely changed. Everything got canceled, and so we had to pivot and launch on April 29th. And of course, the traction was much more compromised, and we had to work a lot harder to pivot and outreach and gain more influencers to really dive into this platform that we built. It is an incredible platform in terms of guiding companies toward on their Jedi journey. But what happened next that we'd never expected was the murder of George Floyd 3 weeks later, and so it completely ignited the industry from their homes, and we had so much passion and interest and engagement, and that's when it frankly got a lot harder, because we also realized the lines were pretty blurry, and we had missed a major part of the equation in launching the Jedi Collaborative. Most of the people supporting it were white and engaged, and most of the people were really working on it hard were women, which is a part of the equation. But we realized is we hadn't really centered the influence and the decision making of the BIPOC, Latinx, and those intersectional communities of Black and women, which are so important, Latinx and LGBTQ. And so we had to, once we realized that when you center and uplift those groups, you basically create a whole upwelling for the entire company to center at every level the work. And so that became much harder because we need to figure out in an online world how to build bridges and relationships with a community that was in deep, deep pain online. And so that has been a tremendous challenge. We've dug in. I've never worked harder in my life to bring in experts, be very vulnerable, accept that we are not the experts in this work at all, even though we've launched the platform, and center other voices and be willing to give up power and ownership, which is really tough to do online because you're sitting with yourself a lot versus in the room and connecting and understanding and even forgiving for a lot of white privilege, and realizing that in the midst of being alone a lot. So I think there's, when you have challenges, it can almost be harder and more emotional. And the other piece we hear a lot from companies, and I'm sure this whole industry has felt, is at first it felt kind of novel and fun, and things were almost easier because you were agreeing and you were helping each other. But the Zoom setting does not allow for people to embrace conflict. There's almost a culture of agreement that happens that really breaks innovation. And it also limits us from those impromptu interactions where magic can happen in the office. So there's a lot that we worry about in terms of the overall innovation of the industry, and how do we, particularly when it comes to sustainability, and how do we continue to ignite that?
on the button. Zoom world and real world, not the same thing, right? So I know we're over time, but I really want to get the rest of your perspectives on kind of how the 2020 of it has been for all of you. So Stefana, do you have a couple of words about still trying to work on supply chain transparency in a challenging time?
Definitely. So first of all, I think I would like to say I agree with everything that Lara says on this. I think it's been a really challenging for many people, and I think, I mean, not just because of how I look, but also because of the lack of being in Asia and in a country that's been blessed by having very few cases of COVID. Me and family have been very, very lucky on this hard 2020 that has been very hard for so many families. And I do think that, there's been a lot of impact on mental health also for people that are professionals and are working the way we are working. But one point that I wanted to share about COVID is that we have had the chance, many of us at least, to continue to have our livelihood secured. And for many people that are living instead in informal economies, facing COVID as a risk was a necessity. If you are making your wage on a daily basis, you cannot not go out because there's a risk of a pandemic outside. And we've seen this in Asia and in many countries affecting millions and millions of people and putting themselves at risk to provide food for their families. And I think this is something that we should always have in mind, that when for us in these rooms, working on collaboration, I would say, at least for myself, that I've had it easy this year. And I hope that we can spare a thought for those that have had their lives put at risk and their families' lives put at risk on a daily basis to just keep on going. Yeah, that's just my thought.
Absolutely. And by the way, hope that you all continue to stay healthy and well. Erin, do you want to wrap it up for us? And the 2020 of it all, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hope everyone on the call is healthy and safe. It has been an incredibly difficult year. And, we work with the food sector, so they've been at the front lines of just keeping food on shelves in stores, which has been no small feat this year. And so our industry has been galvanized and busier than ever. And a lot of climate projects have been either disrupted or put on hold. And I think, as I was mentioning in my kind of video at the beginning, I was worried that would just stop all. Climate would become, there would be too many other priorities and climate would be edged out. And the most hopeful part of this year has been that people can hold all of this at once. And there is a vast understanding that we have a lot of systemic issues right now as a society. And there seems to be more energy than ever for individuals, for companies to be part of something bigger than themselves. So even when individual projects might be on hold within the company, as the company absorbs the impacts of COVID, we have seen more interest and energy and buy-in in some of our projects than we've ever seen. Policy advocacy has been a part of that. Coming out of COVID, the economic recovery is going to define the next era of climate action in the US. And we've done a huge effort to get companies able to support that. And we have had such incredible buy-in that we've never seen on policy. And for people, I should say, for people who are listening who want to be part of that, we have a sign-on letter right now with more than 500 signatories just sending a message to the new administration saying we want climate to be a top priority. So you can go to businessesforclimateaction.com if you want to join those hundreds of companies. It's a really easy way to join a chorus of business who are calling for better action on climate in the next year. I think we've also, in addition to COVID, I should just say, we've also felt the impacts of climate. I know in Colorado, you guys had horrible wildfires this year. I'm in California, it was the same. We can't ignore it. So I just want to thank all of you guys for continuing to care and push forward. It truly does matter. So thank you.
Can we link to that pledge in the chat so people can check it out? I could pick all of you guys' brains all day, but I also want to let Caitlin have a stab at you too. Caitlin, are you there? What questions do you have for this amazing panel?
Hi, Melissa, I am. Wow, that was such an inspiring time to spend with all of you. And amazingly, Melissa, many of your questions today aligned exactly with many of our audience questions. So I feel like you did an excellent job fielding all of those, and it was incredible to get the perspectives of the people we have at the table. So I know we're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm not going to take some additional questions from the attendees today because we really did answer most of them. But I wanted to just take a moment to really appreciate and thank all of you for being here. So when you think about collaboration, and we have all of these big issues that are happening in the world, you know, businesses can absolutely come together, but even when they do that, they need a person to help lead that movement, to take all of that energy and to funnel it in a way that is actually impactful. And each of you have dedicated your entire careers to making that happen, and to being a force that can take in all of that capacity from all of these incredible businesses who are ready to do business a little differently, and to funnel that in a way that's effective and really does create change. So I just want to honor all of you for those personal commitments you're making to this, and really appreciate your perspectives. You're all my heroes. I follow your organizations regularly to see how you're doing, and learning from you. And I hope at some point we can all be in the same room and continue to collaborate together. So thank you so much for that. I'll hand it back to you, Melissa, to go ahead and kick us off for the next session.